So we have Don Swenholt, Making Your Talks Unforgettable. Making Your Talks Unforgettable, Don Swenholt.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Thanks for the kind welcome. I'd like to offer a couple of comments about the introductory remarks or the setup. One is I wanted to offer a quick comment about time, that I recommend that speakers aim to speak for never more than 80% of their allotted time, and certainly never to go over. So if you ever have an assignment, if somebody says, come to speak to us for 10 minutes, then plan for 8 minutes. Nobody will ever complain if you're done too soon. I promise not to hit 20 minutes today. The other is the question of titles for talks. I generally discourage titling talks for this reason. In my regard, titling talks makes the talk an object. It objectifies the talk. And so the talk becomes more of a thing rather than a conversation. Especially in the business world, talks that are more like conversations are more warmly received than talks that feel like they are prepared objects or artifacts. So that reflects my hesitation on the titling concept. I'd like to ask now to my content for the day, I'd like to ask the group, is there anybody here who was not here the last time I spoke to the group? Okay, so I see one hand, and I want to simply catch you up a little bit on who I am and what we're going to do today. I'm a contractor. I'm a consultant at NIST and at NASA and NIH and elsewhere. I work on communication skills broadly. I have a history of working on high-profile presentations, specifically presentations that are designed to secure funding for projects. And I've got a great track record of helping teams give presentations that land the dollars to support their work. That's how I happen to be with you today. I was connected with Lisa by Gordon Gillerman, who's the director of the Standards Coordination Office. He and I have done a lot of work together. He was chatting with Lisa, and he thought that I might be useful to the Toastmasters group. But I'm happy to chat with you guys. As you know, when we spoke the last time, I said, when people come to me and say, I want to be a better presenter, the first thing I say is join Toastmasters. And so I'm a super fan of the work that you guys do. Today, my wish is to review our last session briefly and then to talk about ways to make your talks unforgettable. And so, let's see. Okay, last time we posed and answered two questions. What makes a business presentation great, and how do you set objectives for a successful talk? Here's a quiz for those of you who were here the last time. We provided 3 answers for this question, and I wonder if you recall any of those 3 answers, and if you do, write them down. Either make a mental note or write down somewhere the 3 things that we said are characteristic of successful or terrific business talks. And here they are. First among them was service, that people come, especially at work, people come to talks in order to meet personal and professional needs. So they don't come out of a random curiosity. Sometimes they do, but if you can actually figure out what they want and give it to them, they're going to enjoy your talk from a functional standpoint. That's the service piece. Next is pleasure. This is the opposite of boredom, that your talks need to be energizing, electrifying if you can, that people should feel better at the end of the talk and more energized and powerful than they do before the talk. And the third is relationship, that good talks create in the listener an appetite to be affiliated with the speaker. They create an appetite for continued association with that speaker. They say, that's somebody I would like to have lunch with, I'd like to have a conversation with, I'd like to have that person on my team, etc. So this is how we answered the first question, what makes a great talk great? The next question was, how do you set objectives for a successful talk? And we reviewed 2 ways to do that, to write behavioral objectives or to create a quiz. For anybody who didn't hear this and wants more information, follow up with me via email and I can take care of you in that regard. Now then, we're ready for today's topic, which is how to make your talks unforgettable. And I'd like first to explain what I mean by unforgettable. certainly we want your talks to be unforgettable because you personally are wise, eloquent, and charismatic. And this is not that. Today's discussion is about a much simpler phenomenon, which is giving talks that are easy for people to remember, giving talks that are easy for people to summarize. I maintain that if I talk about any topic, but especially a complicated topic, and you understand it, that's good, but it's insufficient. It's so much better if when I give that talk, you understand it and you are prepared to go back to your office and summarize it for somebody else. That's when I've created a multiplier effect. So today's discussion is about two techniques that help you create that phenomenon where people not only understand what you have said, but they're prepared to go back to their office and summarize it for somebody who wasn't there. And we're going to examine two ways to do that. First is to use a message map, and you all got the homework, right? You saw the video about the message map, I hope. And if you didn't, you'll be okay. But there is a video that we can link you to that is an interesting approach to the message map concept. And the next is to use the wave pattern. These are the two things that we're going to talk about in this session, the message map and the wave pattern. The message map is quite simply, it has two components, a thesis and 2 to 4 supporting ideas. If you'd like a substitute term for thesis, just say a main idea and 2 to 4 supporting or subordinate ideas. And I'll give you some latitude there. I'm going to say 2 to 5, that if you want to make it 5 supporting ideas, I can live with that. Past 5, and I start to get a little bit squirmy. Now, here are examples. First of all, you saw the video. For those of you who did see the video, the product being described was Lush soap. Take a moment to see if you can remember any of the 3 features of Lush soap that the speaker described. If you can remember 1, that's terrific. If you can remember 2, that's amazing. If you can remember 3, outstanding, remarkable. And the fact that you remember any or 3 is testimony to the power of this message map notion. You have a very simple message and simple support. So here is that message map. Lush makes handmade soaps and cosmetics. And then there were 3 supporting points. They're fresh, they're environmentally friendly, and they support ethical causes, or campaigns, I think was the term that Carmine Gallo used. So that was one example. Here's an example that I got from a presentation I saw at Northrop Grumman. What I learned from my journey. 3 things: travel dissolves social strata, traveling encourages innovative thought, traveling transforms the traveler. I'm confident that you see the pattern. 1 big idea and 3 supporting ideas. In terms of a presentation, these supporting ideas are actually the sections of the talk. So they're not just 3 things that you say to support the idea. There are 3 sections of the talk that support the idea. We can then expect that the talk itself, if we outline the talk, has 5 pieces: the beginning, the ending, and the 3 sections of the talk as shown here on the message map. And here's a 3rd example. Great speakers deliver more than words. They satisfy an appetite, they energize their listeners, they connect. Now, each of these message maps is an outline for a presentation. Again, we would build an introduction, we would build a conclusion, and then we have 3 sections, each of which go to support the thesis, great speakers deliver more than words. Some special thoughts about the composition of a message map. 4 special thoughts, in fact. First is economy, that these are all very simple expressions. These are very short expressions. The longest line on the page is at the top of the page. Lush makes handmade soaps and cosmetics, 6 words. And all of the others are shorter than that. So let's say that economy is an essential feature of well-composed message maps. Next comes parallelism, that these expressions, the expressions in the supporting position, all match each other. You see that they're all kind of repetitive. They're subject, verb, object in this case, but they could all be verbs. They could all be nouns. The repetition creates harmony and makes the expressions easier to talk to and easier to remember. I want to pause for a second to talk about that first message map, Lush Makes Handmade Soaps and Cosmetics. I changed this a little bit to make it fit my concept of parallelism. In the original, if you can recall what you saw in the video, the three expressions were fresh, environmentally friendly, and ethical causes or ethical campaigns. Now, that violates the principle of parallelism because the first, fresh, is an adjective. The second, environmentally friendly, qualifies as an adjective, even though it has an adverb. It's functionally an adjective. And then the first, third, ethical campaigns, that's a noun phrase, and it clunks. It doesn't work musically with the others. So I've changed them so that they all match. They're fresh. They're environmentally friendly. They support ethical causes. Let me add an additional thought about parallelism. We may have spoken about this the last time we were together. Parallelism applies throughout a talk, especially and most noticeably on a single slide with bullets. On a single slide with bullets that match each other in syntax are easier to absorb than bullets that are different from one another in syntax. So repetition of form is what we're talking about here. I said there were four ideas that support effective message maps. The first is economy, the second is parallelism, the third is musicality. So I want the expressions that you use to work well in your ear, and I want them to come out of your mouth comfortably. They need to kind of sound attractive, almost like a song. Now, there's nothing particularly fancy about Lush Makes Handmade Soaps and Cosmetics, but it does have a nice rhythm to it, and it certainly isn't difficult to say. So musicality is an important concept when it comes to message maps. The words and expressions need to be easy to say and easy to recall. And then the final thing is clever word choice. I'll frankly suggest that the expressions on the screen in front of you aren't especially clever, except that I do like the main idea in the third message map. Great speakers deliver more than words. I think that's an intriguing concept there. And what I'm looking for here is the idea of a clever expression that aids recall, that aids memory. And so these, ladies and gentlemen, are message maps. My experience is that I've been using message maps now for 20 years, and I have yet to find a single talk that can't benefit from the application of this construct. Some people say, well, this is a particular kind of talk. It's a sales talk or it's a general talk. Fine. I've seen the very same concept applied in highly sophisticated technical talks. It works there too. So experiment with it. Use the message map. You'll find that your talks are easier to plan, easier to deliver, and most importantly, easier for other people to remember. That's the first of our two concepts today, message maps. Next comes the wave pattern. The wave pattern is an oscillation between two levels of information, simple and complex. Every presentation probably has a little bit of both. And that's our domain of concern here, is the way that we intertwine simple material and complicated material. Here's a question for you. I think your instincts will tell you that every presentation should begin at one level or another, simple or complex. I know that you're thinking simple. That's the correct answer. That's the same for the ending as well, that good presentations have a simple ending. The ending actually is a summary of what came before, and it's at a very simple level. In fact, as a matter of convenience, you might say it's okay to actually end the talk the same way that you began it. Whatever you use as your beginning, you can use in the end. The end is essentially a repetition of the beginning. And then in the middle, we've established this notion now that we're going to have three sections, right? Because that's the message map. One thesis and three subordinate ideas. So it's these sections that are going to vary between simple and complex like this. Now, this snake, this wave pattern might be the coolest thing I've learned about giving a presentation, especially in a technical environment, in the past 35 years. The idea is to begin simply and end simply for the whole talk, and then to do the same thing for each section. Simple beginning, simple ending. In contrast, what we frequently find is a talk begins at the complex level and stays there, or might begin simply, but it becomes complex and it stays at the complex level all the way through the end. A better proposition is the talk has a simple beginning, complicated body, and a simple summary. But the wave pattern is really the way to do it. So there are at least 2 points in your talk when you're back at the level of somebody who doesn't really know very much about your subject. In these transition points between the first and second section and the second and third section, the person who fell asleep or lost their way suddenly is reintroduced to the talk. They're drawn back into the talk. I like to use an athletic analogy that these transitions between sections are like the change in innings in baseball or the intermission in an opera, that they allow people to regroup and get set for the next dive into complexity. Let's also consider some alternate expressions for simple and complex. You could call the simple level the beginner level and the complex the expert level. And so your talk goes between beginner and expert, beginner and expert, beginner and expert. And what this means is that nobody's left out, that some of your talk will be over the head of the beginner, and some of your talk will be elementary for the expert, but you're getting to both levels of interest in your talk. I also want to introduce the concept of, I call it the PEP concept, point, explanation, point. We might say that the whole talk is set up that way, that the introduction is your point, it's your summary, that the body is the explanation of the introduction, and that the ending is the repetition of the explanation in simple terms. So it's PEP, point, explanation, point. And that same process applies for the individual sections as well, that they begin very simply with a point that the beginner, the layperson, the novice, the newcomer understands. And then they can get as complicated as necessary, but let's say keep that to a limit, and then they become simple once again. Now, this is my experience, that when I see a talk built with a message map and constructed in the wave pattern, simple, complex, simple, that's a talk that I'm going to remember, and I'm going to be able to come home and summarize that talk to my wife, Christina. So, our interest is in making your talk summarizable. The 2 big notions here are use the message map, use the wave pattern, and those 2 things are going to dramatically increase the likelihood that people will remember what you've said and they'll tell others about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Toastmaster of the Day. Thank you, Toastmasters and guests. Unfortunately, Don had to leave us early, but I will give his evaluation anyways. He did a great job summarizing in a very short amount of time what he did last time, so that if you weren't here for that great talk, you understood his triangle, you know, the service, the relationship, and the pleasure that a successful talk should have. And that video is on our YouTube website, so go check it out. What he did really well for me was, one, he alleviated my fears that I don't have to be wise, elegant, or charismatic to give a talk that's memorable, which is really important for all of us to remember that great speaking isn't necessarily just about those things. It's about the content of the talk. And while Toastmasters, you know, we like titles and we do require them, he gave us some things to think about, is that if we think about conversations and not talks, then we might be able to connect with our audience even further. Thank you. Thank you. I see you over there, Robert. And then he moved on to new material, which was the message map and the wave pattern. And those were also very interesting ways to kind of weave in this triangle as well. He gave some really good examples from Lush and the traveling, and also the last one, which I can't remember, but they were really good examples. So I think that the ways that he would have improved is to give more examples of economy, parallelism, musicality, and clever word choice. I think he did a pretty brief job of it, but maybe give us examples of like clever word choice that works and clever word choice that doesn't, because if you're like me, maybe you're not very musical or understand what that really means. So I think a good example of that would have been nice. I think he did it with the Lush example, but even more would have been great. I'm about to give a talk, and I think I can use these things. And so I think we're really happy that Don was able to talk with us, because Toastmasters gives us kind of like big picture things that we could think about, you know, audience, gesture, vocal variety. But he kind of got down to the nuts and bolts, and I like that it's a step-by-step prescription that we can follow pretty easily. So thank you to Don again. Thank you all of us for being here. Again, I think he could have gave us more examples for those of us who can't picture what a good musical wordage is and who can't picture what a bad musical wordage is. But other than that, I thought the word mapping and the wave pattern was really good. And I am energized and excited to implement it in my last talk. So thank you.